It is going to be the end of the Yamaha R1. Mark my words on that. Let's go for a little ride and talk about it.
Welcome back to Garage Tuning, where we are back on the Triumph Daytona 660. We're going for a little rip. Also, by the way, if you have a newer bike, I got to plug it real quick. You got a newer bike, go check out btmoto.com, see if they support your bike, because they tuned this bike and it has made it an absolute treat to ride around. If you have an electronic throttle, just because you're giving her the full beans does not mean you're actually getting full beans. So please, go check out btmoto. Use code HOON82, save you a little bit of money, help support the channel. Anyway, back to the topic of the video today. That's right, we're going to be talking about the all-new bike that Yamaha just released, and it's not for the street. So I know that might be a little confusing. People might see that and go, well, the R1's still for sale. Well, kind of. It's still for sale in the US. Oddly enough, though, it's not even for sale in Europe, the European market. So, yeah, anyway, Yamaha has finally joined the bandwagon of making a V4 for MotoGP. I think they were actually the very last people in MotoGP to not be using a V4. They were really holding out on that old inline 4. Remember back when the crossplane came out, and it was a huge talking point, and everybody thought that they were crazy. Let's talk about it a little bit. They debuted the Yamaha V4 to the public, which I believe there was actually rumors. I swear I remember seeing more about this before it actually came out, but I don't know. It might have just been me. Maybe I was in a different timeline, you know, the Mandela effect and all. But so they debuted this old Yamaha V4 MotoGP bike. I forget what the actual name of it was. It was, oh, I really do forget what the long name of it was. But anyway, they released this bike on September 12th of 2025 at Mazzano Raceway, I think. I could be pronouncing that wrong. I'm American. Non-American names don't go over well. Well, actually, even American names sometimes don't go over well in pronunciation. So they debuted this V4, and I will say it is an absolute beautiful bike. It doesn't look a whole lot different from their previous MotoGP bike, but there's a few changes, such as the whole tail is being redesigned, and due to the fact that it's a V4, it's actually a bit narrower than the inline 4. Yamaha has been holding on to that inline 4 for so long because something about the geometry of the inline 4 inside that bike, it just gives them a higher corner speed, they claim. They do absolutely have a fantastic bike going through the corners. Where they're really lackluster, though, is on corner exit and then on the straightaways. It's crazy how much more power those V4s have when it comes to pulling down the straights. So, frankly, they really had to come up with something and make a switch to keep up with the competition, you know? You can't just hold and say, well, I've got a really strong bike on one section of the track, but then being absolutely dominated by everybody else that's running the V4. At some point, you got to admit, maybe everybody's doing it for a reason, and you got to kind of follow suit. But they also have done this for another reason, and that's because in 2 years, in 2027, MotoGP is actually restricting it from 1,000 cc's down to 850, and all the manufacturers have claimed that they can scale these V4 motors down to 850 and still make more power than if they were an inline platform and scaled down to 850. I believe in them. They know a lot more about this than I do. You might be asking yourself, well, why does this really matter? The R1 is a street bike, and you're talking about the top tier of motorcycle racing. I think if you step back and look at Yamaha as like an entire company of what they produce, they're very passionate about their sport bikes, and this car is going so slow. I am so over this already. No cop. So if you look at Yamaha's sport bike lineup, right, what do we got right now? We got the R3, the R7, the R9, and the R1. Well, other than the R3 is definitely made as more of a beginner bike that's just kind of meant to look like a sport bike, so that way, you know, if somebody wants to start on a sport bike but are too scared, they can buy the other. We talked about the whole tier list, but if we just look at the R7, R9, and R1, you'll notice a trend, and that's that they are all very, very track-focused bikes. Especially, I mean, I would argue the R7 is far more track-focused than it really needs to be. If you look at the riding position, I believe that bike has fully adjustable suspension, which in its class, that's the one thing I kind of diss on the R7 is it's so slow, but yet it has the most aggressive riding position out of all of the, you know, road-going sport bikes. And then if we take a look at the R9 though, that bike has absolutely been dominating on tracks, and they put a lot of track technology into that bike. You can definitely tell that they did not build that bike to be a street highway rolling machine. They built that bike to go around curves, around a track, and do it well. I'll give them credit for that. It is a great bike. I still just don't like it. I don't like the hole in the middle of it. It looks dumb. But I digress. The R1 switched to a cross-plane crank motor, even though it makes a little less top-end power than the other guys, because they wanted that torque for pulling themselves out of corners and making more of the low-end and mid-range power to be faster around a track. You see what I'm hitting at here? All of their sport bikes have been extremely track-oriented. So I would not be surprised that with MotoGP's Yamaha team developing these V4s, that we don't see that technology trickle down to the streets. And my biggest fear is that, well, we're not even going to have a 1000 anymore. They are going to drop it to an 850. I could see them doing that. I mean, with the increasing emission laws and everything else, it would not surprise me one bit if we lose the leader bike and go to an 850. And I don't know if other manufacturers would follow the trend or not, but I could see Yamaha making an 850cc V4 and it being competitive on track with the other 1000s. I mean, if they can get the thing to make, well, let's face it, a stock leader bike these days is so restricted. I mean, I know, like, for a fact from the videos and research I've done, because I've thought about getting a ZX-10, but the new gen ZX-10s are so restricted from the factory that at Redline they make less power than a 600. So I am positive if you're going stock for stock when it comes to that, Yamaha could definitely make a competitive 850cc V4. And I could honestly see Ducati following the trend. Ducati has always been very track-oriented bikes. I'm not going to claim entirely that the leader bike is going to go away. I think companies like Kawasaki, and I know BMW, they are a real big fan of their S1000. I don't think those are going anywhere anytime soon. I think they will find definitely workarounds on the emissions and still build incredible machines. And I know Kawasaki is, well, let's face it, they've got the H2 and they're going to milk that thing until it's not even a street legal anymore, right? I mean, they've been building the same H2 for, it's got to be going on over 10 years now. I don't think that they've really updated very much. Maybe changed the suspension, but oh man, I can't stand the H2. That's a whole nother video, but it's such an ugly bike, and it's so just goofy, and none of the body flows, and the goofy exposed tubular frame is just, I don't know. I don't like it. They're fast on the highways, and that's all you see people do with them. Again, I'm going to predict, though, that Yamaha is going to go with this trend. Otherwise, they're going to end up being like Honda. If you look at Honda's bikes, they're so outdated when it comes to technology. You know, people, yeah, the Fireblade is super cool, but that is the only sport bike that has a ton of tech. Seems like Honda's really focusing on its like mid-level and lower-level beginner bikes and stuff like that. Like, they've got all that fancy tech with the E-clutches that's going on. It doesn't really seem like Honda is much for caring about their sport bike lineup anymore. And I guess I can't say I blame them if the sales on sport bikes are not supporting it. Really, overall, entirely, unfortunately, the sport bike market is kind of crashing. It's really heartening and sad to say, but yeah, the sport bike market is crashing. So these companies got to do something wild and something cool to get people excited about their bikes. And I think an all-new MotoGP-inspired V4 Yamaha would definitely set a trend. I think people would be super excited about that. I mean, like, look at the R9. I think that they set an example that R9 and more companies are going to lead to follow. Bigger displacement engines, making a little bit less power, but making more torque, and they're doing faster lap times around the track. I don't know. I mean, like, comment down below, guys. Like, do you think that I'm right? Do you think Yamaha might do away with the R1? I mean, it's already dead in the European market, like I said. They really only sell it in, I believe, some of the Asian market and the US market, but that's it. I believe the emission laws in the Europe is what made it, they had to get rid of that. I love this bike, man. This bike is so much fun. I'll let you guys know, though, if you did stick around to the end of the video, I am still in the market for a leader bike, and potentially maybe go look at an S1K HP4, one of the older generations ones. I would really like to feel and see what a true super sport and geometry and all that tech feels like going around a corner versus like this. And we have a really good comparison to say this versus that, you know?
Yeah, guys, so that's my thoughts on the old, the new release of the Yamaha. Well, like I said, though, it's not, unfortunately for us, it is just for MotoGP, but it has been showing very promising signs in testing, and I look forward to seeing what they do with it. Like I said, I would really like to see them transfer that V platform into the street, because, frankly, I think it would dominate. I think having a Japanese V4 on the market, a newer one, I should say. I know Honda did that, what was it, the RC51, or it was something like that. They had a V4, but that was years and years ago. And the only V4s we have right now for the street are Aprilia and Ducati, so I think it'd be really cool to see a newer Japanese V4 hit the streets, and frankly, I think it would tear it up, and it would be a gigantic hit. But, yeah, tell me what you guys think. Let me know down in the comments below. If you liked the video, hit subscribe. If you liked it, wait. God, I'm bad at this YouTube stuff. I don't know. Do all the stuff. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.